Does the potential exist that Attorney General Paxton can decide that now he wants to go after you or your site? Absolutely. The answer to that question is definitively yes, and it's why it's so essential that this be a fight that we actually win.
Welcome back to On the Horizon. This is Melrose Michaels. I am your host, and I'm here to share what's worked for me in building my adult creator business to try to make building yours just a little bit easier. Let's get into today's episode. In our industry, legislation and policy changes massively impact the way we run our businesses as adult creators and adult companies. So for this reason, it is incredibly important to understand the landscape as it changes in real time, so that you can stay safe and vigilant in how you operate. Luckily, SWCEO has a lawyer friend who can help with that. So we have Corey Silverstein, and he is the adult industry's leading legal counsel. And luckily for the CEO squad, he is also a very dear friend of mine. So today, Corey has agreed to come on and explain the complicated issues surrounding the Fifth Circuit ruling and then all of the impacts it has on the adult industry as a whole. So Corey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure's all mine to be here, and thank you for getting my name right, because your co-host didn't.
Bryn, feel free to chime in here.
Hey, I know for the future now. Sorry, Corey.
It's okay. I just, maybe we should have like an entire episode dedicated to how to like pronounce my name.
I think that's a good idea.
I mean,
Next week in the Twitter space.
I don't ask for a lot, but or just give me a new stage name. I mean, that's fine too.
Yeah, we'll definitely leave the D initial.
Okay, well, it's fine. Oh, I get that. I got that. That was a joke. I got it.
Yes, welcome to the industry, Corey. So now I want to pivot, if you don't mind.
Welcome.
There's a lot of creators that are going to be tuning into this and listening, especially to the playback, and are going to have no idea about, what it even means, Fifth Circuit court ruling, or like what we're talking about. So can you give us kind of like bird's eye view of what this is in general?
Sure. I mean, I'll work a little bit backwards, and thank you, of course, for inviting me. I think this is my second appearance on your show here.
Third. You're regular.
Yeah. The first couple were incredible, and so I'm really grateful to your audience, and hopefully I'll be able to help everyone out a little bit today. But in essence, what we're talking about here is all about Texas's age verification law. As a lot of you know or don't know, Texas was one of the states that jumped on the bandwagon that was started by the great state of Louisiana, whereby they introduced legislation calling for platforms offering adult entertainment to conduct age verification for all consumers actually coming to look at the content. So it's Texas became one of the larger problems because Texas was really the first state that we saw that actually ran out and decided to enforce their law. Right away, they went after Pornhub. Most recently, they filed suits against Chatterbait and against X-Hamster. That actually just happened a week ago. And so now we're in this interesting situation where Texas is really running amok, and there's a whole lot of court action going on. The Free Speech Coalition is leading the fight in a battle against this law, seeking it to be deemed unconstitutional. And at first, it went okay. We did okay at the trial court level, but unfortunately, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, that's the Court of Appeals that applies to Texas federal court, gave us a very unfavorable ruling. But got some breaking news here for you that are listening live. For those of you that haven't seen the news today on Bloomberg, the FSC has made the decision that they will be taking this up on appeal to the United States Supreme Court. So that's obviously a major development, and that's literally going on right now. It's all been happening in the last few hours here.
Wow, that's exciting. Okay. So the bandwagon that you're referring to, let's start maybe with like kind of the other states that are on this. So from my understanding, Louisiana is also part of this. Is that the only two at the moment?
No, there's actually, I think we're up to 16 now, to be honest. I mean, there's a long list of states that have jumped on this. Louisiana started it, and then there's been, I mean, really, it's countless states, Alabama, and a lot of conservative states, but also some states that we wouldn't usually see pass laws like this. So I think we're up to, I think it's almost 16 states now.
God, that's so concerning.
It is very concerning because we actually had this battle already. This battle went all the way up to the Supreme Court years ago, and we fought this battle and won. And unfortunately, in this new age of kind of right wing, far extreme religious movement politics, who really want to target the adult entertainment industry, they are basically ignoring what the Supreme Court precedent already is, and they've been creating these laws knowing full well that there's a substantial chance that the Supreme Court will again say that these laws are unconstitutional, which is the position that ILO is taking. That's the position that the Free Speech Coalition is taking. It's the position that I'm taking.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about the Fifth Circuit decision in general. It's almost kind of become a little bit of a buzzword in conversation, at least from the people in the circles I run in. But why is this decision so important? Why is the Fifth Circuit decision so important? Why are we talking about that specifically?
Well, it's the only one. It's the only one we have related to this first round of kind of age verification laws and testing their constitutionality. We've got some lawsuits. There's lawsuits that have been filed in Utah. There's been lawsuits that have been filed in Louisiana, but this is the first case that's had to go up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the way the law works is that ultimately, if the U.S. Supreme Court decides not to take the case up, we're going to be stuck with the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit would then become the highest court that had ruled on this specific issue. And that would obviously create a whole muck of problems, because obviously, as an industry, we don't want this. The Fifth Circuit, very conservative. It's made up of interestingly enough, Texas, Louisiana, a couple other southern states, and they've always been very conservative. Some of their decisions as of late have been interesting, to say the least. But what they've done now is, in my opinion, wrong. There was actually, it was a three judge panel that heard the case, and one of the three judges actually dissented and disagreed with the other two. But unfortunately, there were the two that voted the wrong way, and so this is why now we're stuck with this up until we have to take this up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's really the only option. What's so terrifying about this, and this is one of the big things that unfortunately people really don't want to talk about, and I'll talk about it because it's kind of how I am, Mel. That I'll say what's on my mind. Mm-hmm. Is that the states can yell at the top of their lungs all day long that this is about protecting children, but that's such a load of crap. These laws are not about protecting children. These laws are all about being able to control content and being able to say what these conservatives believe should be content that's available and what people should be able to broadcast. That's what's really going on here. They can frame it as a
crusade.
Sounds better. And it's easier for them to get support when they run around town and say this is all about protecting children. It's quite simply, this is all about being able to control the message, and about the far right telling everyone what it is they feel is appropriate and not appropriate for people to be looking at online.
If you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, please take one moment to share it with another one of your adult content creator friends, because you know what the rule is here. We do not gatekeep, and we want to make as many adult creators' businesses as easy as possible. And you sharing this episode with them might do exactly that. Thanks so much in advance.
Yeah, and then also being able to monitor and with ID verification, also being able to potentially link between one user and what they're viewing or consuming online, which is, the whole privacy issue comes into question too, because we already know that people are kind of selling this information in really terrifying ways. I want to talk about one component of this, which is like the lawsuits, right? Because the lawsuits are big news right now. ALO had the lawsuit. Chatterbait was added to the lawsuit. Someone else was added as well.
Well, not added. They're separate lawsuits.
Separate lawsuits. Okay. So when I hear stuff like that, because these are companies pulling out of Texas or trying not to broadcast in Texas because of the Fifth Circuit ruling, one of the things that comes to mind for me, as like my mind is typically creator first, is there are creators that have independent membership sites, with users accessing it in these places.
Sure.
So are those creators then on the hook and liable should, Texas want to also sue the creator or their membership site or entity directly, just like a Chatterbait, for example?
In short, the answer to that question is yes. For those of you that are performers or content creators that are operating your own websites, the law absolutely applies to you. And so is the potential, or does the potential exist that Attorney General Paxton can decide that now he wants to go after you or your site? Absolutely. The answer to that question is definitively yes, Mel. And that's why this fight is so important. And it's why it's so essential that this be a fight that we actually win. We can't afford to lose this fight as an industry. This would set back the First Amendment, privacy, free speech rights. It sets us back decades. This is the disaster situation. And so, for those of you that are out there that are listening, and you guys are operating a site that you allow for members, and you guys are open to people in Texas, you have to seriously consider the law, what the law says, how it might apply to you, and you have to make some decisions about whether or not you're going to comply with the law. If so, how are you going to do it? Or are you going to potentially geo-block? There's various decisions that have to be made. And the unfortunate part of this is because of the Fifth Circuit's ruling, right now, the law is technically in effect.
Yeah. This is like, and that's the part that scared me because when I saw all of this, a company like Pornhub pulls out of a state, or a big conglomerate like, something like Chatterbait pulls out of a state, the creators on those platforms have the benefit that, while it's sad that you're not broadcasting in the states anymore, potentially, you have a little bit of protection because you're on a platform, you're not operating your own, website. But then it came to mind that like all those creators that do have membership sites that have tried to build things for their their own and under their own entities, that they might be running these risks. And that was what made me really worrisome, because from an entrepreneurial standpoint, like I'm all for creators launching their own sites and being independent of a platform, for the longevity of their brands and their businesses. But at the same time, being on some of these platforms does offer us a lot of advantages in terms of sometimes traffic, sometimes brand awareness, sometimes brand trust, and sometimes legal battles like these. And that's something that can't be ignored. There's always pros and cons to running your business one way or the other. And this would be one of those cons, is if you're running a membership site yourself, you're innately liable, just like these big monster sites are at the moment.
Absolutely, and the fines are the same for everyone. It'd be $10,000 a day for those people that are required to comply with the law and aren't complying, which is why what I've been telling everyone to do, and this is what, since everything's gone basically crazy with Texas over the last 2 weeks or so, and then everything, with the new lawsuits filed against Chatterbait and X Hamster, I've been day and night nonstop on calls with clients, basically doing analysis and explaining to clients on an individual basis how this law affects them, what they have to do, what decisions they have to make. The answer isn't going to be the same for everyone. Everybody needs to be looking at this based on their own business, their own numbers, their own situation. And my fear in all this, Mel, is that there's a lot of people that are still in the dark. Obviously, doing shows like this are monumentally helpful because it gives people the opportunity to hear what's going on and realize how serious this is. The FSC has been sending out messages to its members and such, and I've been sending updates on my email list for those of you that are signed up for my email list, with as much updates as I can. But ultimately, what really has to happen here is that any person who's operating a adult website, and if it's your site, membership site, pay-per-click site, whatever you want to call it, whatever sales structure you have, you need to be consulting with me or someone else who understands what's going on, an adult entertainment lawyer, so that you fully know, what the potential risks are. Now, that being said, am I screaming, fire and pointing and trying to get everyone to run in mass chaos towards their closest exit? No. I don't believe the state of Texas is presently interested in the smaller operations. I believe that they're targeting the larger operations because this is where they want to challenge the law with the larger operations. I think it's unlikely that we'll see smaller sites targeted, but that doesn't mean just because they're not being targeted that the clock isn't ticking. Just because someone isn't being sued doesn't mean that they're not incurring the $10,000 a day for not complying with the law. So it's really tricky, Mel, and it's a real head scratcher, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. But this is why what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to convince people as much as I can to try to get an understanding of this, know what's going on, know what your risks are, so that you can make an informed decision. There's no shame in not understanding something and admitting that you don't understand something. I mean, I've had to read this stuff over 100 times, and I still don't totally understand it. Where people hurt themselves, I believe, is where they don't ask for help and they don't ask for, opinions and such when something might apply to them. That's been the mistake that has been made historically in the adult industry that's gotten a lot of companies in trouble. This is one of those situations where, if you're a website operator and you don't have a grasp on this, then you need to be reaching out to me. You need to be reaching out to, the correct professionals that understand this, who can guide you through this so that you at least know what the risks are with the decision you're making.
Yeah, because when you say even though you might not be being sued and it's unlikely they'll come after, maybe small entities or individual creators, you're still incurring the 10,000 a day fine. You say that in terms of like, should they go to see you at a later date, or when this clock is ticking kind of analogy you use is that if Texas does decide to sue, you've accrued that $10,000 a day payment since, backdated to when this took effect. Is that correct?
That's correct. It starts from when the law take effect and you weren't in compliance. That's why when you look at some of the lawsuits that have been filed against the larger companies, they're already seeking millions of dollars because they're going for damages that have accrued since the law became effective and the providers were allegedly not complying. And I say allegedly because, again, it's a lawsuit, and all these parties have a right to defend themselves, as they should and as I suspect they will. But ultimately, again, it's essential, Mel, that people understand that, yeah, I mean, if, someone, if you got two people just kind of operating a small, call it a mom and pop adult entertainment site, just a membership subscription site, and, they're not aware of this, then, they're not doing themselves any good, because they need to be aware that, like, look, this does apply to you. If you're offering services in Texas, it absolutely applies to you.
Yeah. And this doesn't just apply to Texas. I mean, couldn't theoretically any of the states, the 16 or so states that you named, do the same? They turn around and sue the same way, just Texas that actually has?
Well, they have their individual laws. I mean, every state has their own individual laws, and they can only sue for their individual laws. So, for example, the state of Louisiana, can't sue for a violation of Texas's law. They can only sue people for violation of their own laws. But absolutely, if there was if the state of Louisiana wanted to start going after people for this now, they certainly could. They've decided not to because there's legal challenges going on. And historically, what we've seen is that states and governments will typically wait until the constitutional challenges work themselves out before they start running around and chasing people. Case in point was 2257. When 2257, the second version of it, came into effect, and the Free Speech Coalition filed their lawsuit seeking that to be deemed unconstitutional, that battle went on for over a decade. And during that time, the government wasn't really running around trying to arrest people for 2257 violations because they knew there was a challenge. What Texas is doing in this case is very aggressive, very aggressive. It's very much a more unique situation where they're going after people now before even waiting for the legal challenges to get worked out. Because look, if ultimately the Free Speech Coalition and these plaintiffs are successful, um, you know, these individuals will be vindicated. They won't have to pay the fines, and that'll be that. This is one of the reasons why a lot of states have, and the federal government for that matter, when there's a constitutional challenge, have oftentimes waited. That's not happened in this case. In this case, this particular attorney general, Mr. Paxton, seems to have an agenda. He seems to like the news headlines that he's making in terms of suing these large companies. I think it's part of his political agenda, but that's neither here or there. That's just my opinion. But I don't think it's the right course of action at all. I think that what the state should be doing is they should be waiting for the courts to rule and wait for the courts to decide whether or not this is constitutional before they continue to run around and go after people when, again, there's a very, good likelihood, in my opinion, that the law is going to be deemed unconstitutional.
Yeah. And when you're saying too, because like this week you've been swamped with helping your other clients and navigating, these developments, what in my mind the way I perceive you telling me that is like, okay, people have to these companies, these platforms have to make new arrangements, they have to change potentially terms of service agreements, they have to do things differently. What could we expect as creators to kind of see the trickle down effect of that? Like, should we be keeping an eye out for new terms of service coming down the pipeline, maybe regarding these kinds of changes? Should we be keeping our eyes out for geo-blocking regarding these changes? What kind of things could we expect to see?
I don't think it's going to be a changes in terms, but I think what performers are going to be seeing, for you performers that are out there working on some of these large platforms. I mean, look, as the news headlines have read, Pornhub decided to geo-block Texas. For those of you that are deriving a substantial part of your income from users in Texas, you need to anticipate that revenue is going to go down immediately. The fact is that, look, when you geo-block, some people will try to get around geo-blocking by using things like VPNs and various other technologies. But there's a lot of other people that are just going to go to a website, and if they can't get access to it, they're just going to move on and they're going to go to the next site. So if you're a content creator on one of these large platforms, you need to be aware that there is definitely the potential here that you're going to see a decrease in revenue. Texas is a large state. Texas has a lot of major cities. They have a large population center. And from what my understanding is from my own clients is that there's a substantial percentage of these platforms' traffic that comes from Texas. So if you're a content creator and you see a drop, you should not be surprised by that. In fact, you should be anticipating it because of what's going on.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because on products like OnlyFans specifically, we can see in our statistics and in our data that they provide us kind of where our regions are, like what countries and in what states, more specifically to some degree. So I'll be interested to see how that actually pans out. And then on the flip side, in the same breath, when a large portion of adult site traffic is coming from these states where this policy is passing, that's such a strong indicator to me as someone on the outside looking in. Not, I guess, not that far outside. I'm in the industry, but for me, looking in as just like a citizen of the population, how contrary that is to the behavior of the people in Texas. Like if they're looking this stuff up actively and seeking it out, for policy to pass, it just seems like a lot of moral signaling more than actual what people might actually want on the ground, so to speak.
I don't believe this is what people want. I don't think these laws represent what people want. I think these laws represent what a small minority of politicians want so that they can appease their far right-wing voter base, which is the far right church groups and conservatives. That's who they're trying to make happy, and that's whose votes they're trying to secure. Look, let's not kid ourselves here. Politicians have a job, and their job is to keep themselves in office, is to keep winning elections. You win elections by getting votes. You get votes by giving people what they want. And he or the states that are doing this are obviously catering to that cry that said, we want more content moderation. And again, I understand that you can label this as all about protecting children, but just because you label it something and that's how you're selling it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm buying it that way. I'm not buying it that way. And I think there's a lot of people that agree with me, and I think there's a lot of people that disagree with me. But I like the fact that in this country, we have the Constitution and we have a First Amendment so that we can talk about these things freely and openly without the fear of persecution and such. But I want everyone, who's listening to this to really understand that if you didn't think that we are an industry that is under attack, I mean, this should be it. This should be that final bell ringing that you guys have no question that this is an industry that's under attack. And when I say under attack, I mean we're fighting the government. We're fighting the government to ensure our survival.
Yeah. Someone just commented, they're asking how about broadcast platforms? I guess we touched on this to a degree, but one of the biggest, people being named in the suit is a broadcast platform being Chatterbait. But maybe you can speak to that more broadly, like how this impacts broadcast platforms specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna, I can't speak directly to the allegations against Chatterbait. That wouldn't be appropriate for me to do. But what I
Mhm.
can tell you is that for platforms that are similarly situated that offer the live cam experience, the same thing goes for them. The way the law these age verification laws are written absolutely apply to them. So there's no difference between, say, a site like Pornhub versus a live cam site. Both of those sites are going to have to, if they're offering their services in these particular jurisdictions that have these age verification laws, are going to have to adhere to them
Yeah. Or
if they choose to. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of decisions to be made here. There's a lot of people and a lot of platforms out there that are taking the wait and see approach, and they're saying we're going to wait to see how these constitutional challenges pan out. There's numerous different options for a person to do and for a company to do, and this is why I'm begging people in the adult industry not to just follow what everyone else is doing. Just be, there's an old line that I remember my mother used to say it to me all the time when I would do something stupid, and she'd be like, "Well, if your friend said to go jump off a bridge, would you go and do it?" I keep thinking of that because it's really the same thing. Just because you see one particular company taking a certain course of action, that doesn't mean it's the right course of action. Everybody should be making their independent decisions based on their independent circumstances, and you can't just lump everyone into one category. It's impossible. If you do that, you're making a tremendous mistake.
I could see that just because also too, if a large segment of your traffic and sales are derived from someplace like Texas, for example, and you have to weigh that against the cost of a potential suit in a $10,000 a day fine, there's going to be kind of a scale to measure against for something like that, especially really the gambling bet of, if the challenge upholds or not when it gets to the Supreme Court and kind of placing your bets where you feel comfortable.
I mean, you got to think about where we're at in the world. You have to, when I was in law school and I was, studying constitutional law, frankly, I never dreamed that in my lifetime I would see Roe versus Wade getting overturned. But
Yeah.
here we are in 2024, and it happened. So, the makeup of the court changes. The current makeup of the court is a predominantly conservative court, predominantly appointed by Republican presidents. There's a lot of things that everybody has to keep in mind. And it's not just one, quick decision here. There's so many things at play, and there's so much at risk that, to really be a responsible and proactive adult entertainer, you need to be acting based on your circumstances, not just based on, well, this company did it, so I'm going to go and do it too. That's the wrong approach. That's what comes back to bite people in the ass.
I want to ask, in your opinion, and maybe not legal advice even, but like when you're thinking about creators and them being informed and them understanding what's going on right now, what can we do as performers? What should we be focused on? What should we be organizing around or participating in, if anything, for this specific topic?
There's a couple of things. I mean, number one, if you haven't joined the Free Speech Coalition, you should. The FSC really is the strongest voice that we have in this fight right now. The Free Speech Coalition is always open to taking membership. They have all different membership levels. You don't need gajillions of dollars to join them. They have, frankly, if you can't afford whatever their stated memberships are, I'm sure you could reach out to the FSC and they would still want your support. I encourage everyone to be following the news right now. For those of you that, aren't looking at xbiz.com and in avn.com every day, if you're not looking, to see what adult industry headlines are coming out, you should be following it. I created a thing called Silverstein Legal Alerts, which is where basically anyone who's on my my list basically when something major happens, you'll get an email from me telling you like, hey, this is major. You need to pay attention to it. If you haven't signed up, you can. It's free. It's at myadultattorney.com. All the way at the bottom, there's a red sign up now button. Just stick your email address in and you'll get it. XBiz also has a daily email that they send out. I encourage you to sign up for that also. But the other thing that I'm encouraging people to do is I really want people in the industry to be openly talking about this. There's such a, you know, sometimes there's such a fear mel about people talking about this as they're afraid that like, oh, if, we talk about this, we're going to be somehow labeled that we're supporting, children viewing pornography. That's such the opposite of the truth. There needs to be conversation. We're the minority here. The industry is so small and compared to the groups and government that's attacking it right now that there needs to be open dialogue about this. When you're on, I keep calling it Twitter. I don't think we're supposed to call it that anymore, but when you're on X, tag your politicians, tag them and say, what's your position on this? Like, really? Are you saying that now anytime before I want to go look at certain content, the government is going to decide whether it's okay for me to look at it or not? These are important conversations that people need to be having that we're not having. And, the adult entertainment industry is phenomenal because it has, in my opinion, some of the greatest fighters for freedom of speech that have ever existed. That's why I've dedicated my career to it. And you all have, sometimes it might feel like, you can't make a difference, but you absolutely can. You should be talking about it on social media. You should be talking to, the various different, even the media sources that oftentimes cover adult. You should be telling them like, hey, these laws could horrifically be detrimental because we don't want the government, saying what someone can look at, what they can't based on where they are. And this is completely out of hand. This is scary stuff. This is why the First Amendment exists, to prevent things like this from happening. And what's happening right now is horrifying.
It is horrifying. Someone is asking us, listening in, that when they were talking about broadcast platforms, they were referring actually to like Time Warner, Comcast TV platforms. Does this apply the same way to like, something that might be on HBO in those areas?
No, because the percentage of the content that they're showing isn't high enough, so they wouldn't comply. That's a great question, but no, these are going to be websites that are, I believe the magic number is 33% of their content or more. I believe is the magic number. Some of the states have magic numbers, some of them don't. But because, quite honestly, there's so many different state laws now that I get a little bit mixed up myself, just as they're coming out so fast I can't even keep up with all the verbiage. But no, HBO, that wouldn't be the primary purpose of their business, and so no, that they wouldn't apply to them. But that's a phenomenal question.
The other one that comes to mind too is like, and maybe that's the same answer because it's not 33% or more of the content, but like how that would apply to like a social media site like Twitter or X, where we're posting adult content that's obviously not being age verified. Would it be the same situation?
Yeah, the argument there is going to be that the percentage of adult content is minimal. I know that, for us that are here on this call today, we see a lot of adult content every day because we follow each other
Yeah.
who predominantly post it. But in the grand scheme of like overall what X has to offer, the actual percentage is tiny. There's also going to be other organizations that are going to be fighting this hard. Net Choice has been taking on some of these laws and having some really good success. I believe it was their general counsel actually made some media comments just yesterday about Florida's law. Florida's law just got signed by Governor DeSantis not even a couple days ago, and Florida's law is just as crazy as Texas's, Louisiana's, and all the other ones. So we have another state that has a massive, viewership population that this is going to affect now. State of Florida has there's a ton of adult entertainment consumption in the state of Florida, and so this is going to be the next thing that everyone's going to be going crazy about. But I suspect we're going to see someone else stand up and fight that one.
Okay. So now that we've got the announcement about going to the Supreme Court, what can we expect to see next potentially?
Well, so the next step in the process is actually going to be, believe it or not, the Supreme Court doesn't have to take it. So what's happening now is that the Free Speech Coalition and their plaintiffs are going to be requesting that the that the Supreme Court take it up. That's via a request that's going to be made. I suspect we'll be seeing that in probably within the next 3-4 weeks. Then the Supreme Court will decide whether or not they want to take the case up, which I am hoping beyond hope that they will. If they don't, we're stuck with the Fifth Circuit ruling, which would be a devastating blow for the industry. Devastating. I can't stress to you how important these next couple weeks, months are going to be, and how important it is for the Supreme Court to take this up to rectify this wrong.
And then these are kind of the times where it's like, it's a little bit of a like, whew, I felt that one because when the Fifth Circuit ruling came down, there was almost this like mood across, industries, friends in the industry, fellow performers, platform owners, people I know at FSC, were just like, man, that one's bad. Like this one is bad.
It's horrible. And it's been something that's been brewing and brewing and brewing and developing and percolating for a while. I've been speaking on panels about this as late ago as 4 years ago. I was telling people this was coming and that we really had to wake up because problems like this were coming. And the unfortunate part is like we are in a lot of industries, a lot of times we don't start mobilizing and speaking up until after the fact, and we've seen that before. We saw that with FOSTA SESTA. And FOSTA SESTA had, same thing. We didn't do enough until it was unfortunately, too late. And in FOSTA SESTA's case, we're now stuck with those particular terrible laws. So it's you're right, Mel. I'm stumbling a little bit for words right now because I can't really disagree with you. You're right. This is one of these times in, adult entertainment that you're going to be like, wow, this was a major, political, legal change. And, some of you who are around, I've been in this industry for a lot more years than I care to admit what my age is. But I've been around for some of these previous battles, and I can tell you that it's like, these battles take a while. The battle against 2257 took the greater part of a decade. These are going to be some pretty crazy times, and everybody needs to be thinking very carefully and fully understanding, okay, how is this going to impact me? What should I be doing now? What should I be thinking now? These are all important things.
Yeah. Can you state your domain, your website link again for the legal alerts? Because that's a newer thing you've started doing, and I'm not subscribed to that. I would like to be, and I'm already actively with FSC, and I follow all their stuff. But it would be nice to be on yours as well.
Sure. It's pretty easy if you just go to my main website, which is myadultattorney.com, and when you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a thing that says email sign up, and there's a little red box. And all you've got to do is put your first name, last name, and email address. If you don't want to disclose your first name and last name, I have no problem with that. Make it up. You can call yourself Ernie and Bert, whatever floats your boat. But ultimately, we send them out as much as we can to keep people informed. It's not really new, to be honest with you. It's been around for a while. We just historically really, our clients really utilized it, but now because of there being so much kind of stuff going on, I push it on everyone so that I think knowledge is power in this industry. So, the more people I can share information with, I figure the better it is for the industry as a whole.
Oh, of course, 100%. I think too, like the biggest thing that you touched on today was just the dialogue. And I think that's why, us with SWCEO trying to work more closely with you, Corey, and bring you on more often to keep everyone informed has been kind of a very clear collaboration that I think can bring value, because the more we can get creators access to you directly in terms of what's going on, a debrief, explaining things in layman's terms, giving us action steps like, okay, make sure you're, subscribed to my alerts or following FSC or writing and tagging your politicians that are local to you in these states. Like these kinds of conversations give us a very clear outline of where we can be useful and where we can activate. So I think these conversations are super important, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, and I haven't shied away. For those of you that know me already, you guys know that I don't shy away. I'll say whatever's on my mind, and I believe that it's important to do so. And so for those of you that are reaching out to me, publicly on social media, I've not been a stranger to reaching out publicly. If you want to message me privately, you can do that too. Whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. But I don't, I committed a long time ago to, dedicating my career to this industry and dedicating my life basically to protecting the First Amendment. And so I'm not going to shy away from, people having, what can be oftentimes considered as hot conversations or controversial conversations. I'm not going to shy away from them. And I guess I'm sorry to anyone who I always say something that doesn't agree with me, but the beauty is I actually love people who disagree with me, because that actually underscores my point that I believe it's what makes our industry so incredible.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Corey, thank you for doing this with us and coming on again. Can you shout out all of your socials so everyone here listening can find you and follow you?
Sure. Best way to get me on Twitter is at my adult attorney. Pretty straightforward. It's just as it's spelled out, just like my website, my adult attorney. I am on Instagram, but I will be honest with you guys, I don't really know how to use it. So if you message me on that, you're probably gonna get a response from my social media manager. That one I believe is just Corey D. Silverstein. Of course, anybody can email me whenever they want. Pretty straightforward. Again, it's Corey, Corey, at Silverstein, Silverstein, legal.com. So it's just Corey at silversteinlegal.com. If for any reason any of you are having a problem getting a hold of me, I'm usually really good. But if you do have a problem, you can always reach out to SWCEO. Mel has my bat phone, which is a red phone that matches the color of Mel's hair, that just starts lighting up in my office anytime she wants to talk to me. So if you guys have a problem getting a hold of me, you can always reach out to her, and she'll push you along. But anything I can ever do for any of the listeners here today, or for any of your friends, or anyone who just wants to have a dialogue about this, just I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. I actually enjoy it.
No, we know you do, Corey. You never shy away from a talk. That's why we love you so much.
I feel bad for, like, when I become an old man and I'm rocking in that rocking chair, and I'm telling all the young timers the old stories and stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna put a lot of people to sleep.
Yes, well, it's good that you're practicing now then, Corey.
Yes, I agree.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to start to wrap up the space. Everyone, make sure you go follow Corey. And Corey, thank you so much again for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Mel.
Anytime. So now, as we begin to wrap up this space, I do want to mention a lot of you guys have commented and started to see that we've been uploading tremendous amounts of content over on our YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed to YouTube, please do so at youtube.com/SWCEO, and make sure you have your notifications turned on so you never miss a new course. Our latest video, OnlyFans Growth Hack, Unpacking Guaranteed Gains promo, and it's kind of where I share this unfiltered look about the truth behind guaranteed gains and offer alternative strategies for how to grow your OnlyFans authentically. You can catch that over on our channel. And we have a ton of other content going up there, like next week and the week after, so stay tuned. Huge thank you to everyone who's subscribed to our Telegram bot. If you haven't already heard, we had released a Telegram bot that essentially sends you out your adult content inspiration and all of the captions you need for your feed, PPV locked messages, and clip store descriptions, etc. And the ideas are researched to be trendy and highly desirable for what fans are currently seeking. And then the captions are optimized with calls to action so that you can increase your earning and unlock potential. The Telegram bot pushes your daily dose of inspiration to your phone every day around 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, so that you no longer have to waste your time researching, planning, or coming up with ideas or captions. The bot takes care of all of it. And if you're not an active Telegram user, we do have PDF versions of the content info and captions that you can get right on SWCEO.com/shop. We recently launched the store website so that we can get you all of the same stuff that goes out in the Telegram bot, and then so much more, like unlock sales scripts and sales objection scripts so that you can close the deal with your fans and PPVs. And if you want to get a taste of what we offer there without spending a dime at all, there's completely free PDF downloads waiting for you there as well. So head on over to sexworkceo.com/shop after this space if you are interested. I do want to take this opportunity while the rest of you still are remaining here to remind everyone listening about SWR Data, my other company, in case you're not yet familiar. SWR Data is on a mission to survey creators like you. We want to hear your feedback about the challenges that you face and how the adult industry can better serve your needs. Our goal is to collect your experiences, your opinions, and your observations about the current state of the adult industry. And then we'll use this data to advocate for the necessary changes to make it a better place for us, the creators. The reality is that a lot of the people in power have never been creators, and they simply do not have the lens to know what our needs are. SWR data is that lens, but we can't do it alone. So for that reason, we're inviting any creator who's willing to participate in our qualifying survey, which helps us understand your expertise as an adult creator. So by taking the survey, you can then start to participate in future paid surveys, with our ultimate aim for the CEO squad to have an additional income stream through SWR data surveys alone. Your experience as a creator is valuable, and we think you should get paid for it. So if you're interested in taking the qualifying survey and then participating in future paid surveys, comment on us to let us know you're interested, and we will DM you on Twitter or Instagram in reply with a qualifying survey link so you can join us in this mission. Lastly, but most importantly, I do want to emphasize that all of the information we put out on SWCEO, we do so for free because we believe in this idea that the more financially successful creators are, the more resources we'll have as a community to do things like lobby Congress, impact policy, organize, and more. So if you value the content you heard here today or the tweets you've engaged with, etc., please, please, please consider sharing it to make the journey easier for your own adult creator friends. Our only ask is that you retweet our stuff so that we can help as many creators as humanly possible. So thank you in advance for that. This is going to bring us to the end of today's Twitter space. Thank you everyone who joined. Thank you Corey who co-hosted. And remember that all of these are turned into blog posts over on our website, SWCEO.com. So you can always revisit any or all of the information there in about a week from now. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Thank you, Bryn, for co-hosting. I'm Melrose Michaels, and I'll see you in the next one.
It would be absolutely incredible if you rated this podcast 5 stars and left a little review. We want to get this podcast to as many adult creators as possible, and you taking a second to leave a couple stars and a review really helps us do that. Thanks so much.